Get on it. I usually post things in there, responses to questions. You could always ask questions there too that you don't get to ask during class time, and I'll do my best to answer it at some point during the week, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. You could get on the WhatsApp group by going to one of the volunteers afterwards. You could ask me, and you could just scan a QR code. It's very easy to get on it if you're not on it, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Last time, we spoke about arkan as-salah. Arkan as-salah, the pillars of salah, or the integrals of salah. Integrals and pillars, they mean the same exact thing. And what we spoke about, we actually spoke about the pillars for 2 full sessions. And that's because there are many of them, and there's a lot of details relating to them. There's 13 pillars. We went over the ones that are the actions and the ones that are statements. And we went over what's relating to intention, that's in the heart, and also what's relating to following the order and procedure of prayers, which is tartib, the last of the 13. And throughout that, we mentioned many of the sunan and recommended acts during prayer. As we were showing the process of prayer, we were also highlighting what are the recommended actions during salah. In this session today, I'm going to focus on 2 things, inshaAllah ta'ala. I'm going to focus on 2 things, inshaAllah ta'ala. And those 2 things are the recommended actions during salah. I'm going to highlight a few categories relating to this, and we're going to get through the ones that we didn't go through. And the second one is the invalidators of salah, mubtilat as-salah. What makes a person's prayer invalid? Those are the 2 subjects we have for today's session. If we have time to go over more, we'll do that, bi'idhnillah. When it comes to sunan as-salah, there are so many of them. But they go back to a few main categories. Aqsam as-sunan. There's 2 ways to look at it. First off, there are sunnahs that are before prayer, sunnahs that are during prayer, and sunnahs that are after prayer. Before, during, and after. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is there are lesser recommended acts during salah and higher recommended acts. Not all acts of sunnah are the same level, right? And there's 2 different terms that we use here. For the lesser recommended acts, and you'll find this in your book. By the way, if you're coming for the first time and you don't have a book, we still have, I think, a few copies of this. So you could get a book. In the book, what he refers to as lesser recommended acts, these are hayat, sunan hayat. Right. Then the second category, and these are just a few, these are sunan ab'ad. These are higher recommended acts during prayers. Now, what's the difference between a higher and a lesser recommended act? What's the difference? A lesser recommended act, if you leave it out, there's nothing expected of you to do. You don't prostrate for forgetfulness. You don't try to go back to it. You don't do any of that. You just continue with your prayer. You missed out on something virtuous, but there's no expected action when abandoning a lesser recommended act. Ahmed, don't forget to share for the intensive, huh? Okay, Jazakallah khair. Then, higher recommended acts, these are the sunnahs that when you leave them out of salah, it is recommended for you to do the prostration of forgetfulness in the end of prayers. Okay, what falls under what? When it comes to sunan ab'ad, and these are the sunnahs that are similar to fard, in the sense, in terms of their form and their status, that you would do sujood sahu for them. These are the higher recommended acts. This refers to 3 things. There's only 3 higher recommended acts during salah. The first one is tashahhud al-awwal. The first tashahhud. The first tashahhud. The first tashahhud. Notice, this is not a pillar of prayer. What does that mean? Does it mean don't do it? No, no, no. Do it. You should do it. It is an important act of salah. But if you don't do it, what must you do? What should you do? Let me change the word. What should you do? You should do a prostration of forgetfulness in the end of prayers. If it was a pillar, a rukun, then what would you need to do? If it was a pillar, you would need to go back to that pillar and continue from there. I'll give you an example. Say if someone is finishing their first rak'ah, and they forget to do the second sajda. Instead, they just stand back up. They sit up, they sit down after they come, and they're absent-minded, and they lose track of how many prostrations they did. So they were sitting down, they said, I think I have to stand up. But after standing up, they realize, oh man, I didn't do the second sajda. How could I forget? I got distracted. I'm certain I forgot the second sajda. Now what do I have to do? Can I just say I'll do prostration of forgetfulness in the end? No, of course not. You have to sit back down and do the sajda, and then you continue with your prayer from there. Your prayer cannot be valid if you leave out a pillar like sajda, like sujood, right? But now with the first tashahhud, what happens with the first tashahhud? What happens? With the first tashahhud, if you're standing up and you still haven't stood up fully, then you could sit back down. But if you've stood up fully for the third rak'ah after the first tashahhud, you cannot sit back down, and you should not. That's why if you're praying behind somebody and they get distracted and they've stood up for the third rak'ah, don't even say subhanallah, because they should not sit back down. Why should they not sit back down? Because the first tashahhud is a recommended act, and they've started an obligatory act, which is the third rak'ah. They can't leave that which is obligatory for that which is recommended. So they missed it. What should they do? In the very end, they do sujood sahu. That's it, right? You guys all with me? That's the difference between a higher recommended act and a pillar. الصلاة لا يمكن أن تصح بدون فعل أركانها. Your prayer can't be valid without the arkan fully being in place. And that's no matter how much time. So now say if, for example, time passes before I wake up, I was in this deep trance, and I was thinking about something, whatever that was, and I get to the sajda of the last sajda of the second rak'ah. And I realize, but be careful here, because a lot of people have intrusive thoughts. I don't want to open a door of intrusive thoughts for people. If someone has intrusive thoughts, this doesn't apply to them. If someone has intrusive thoughts and waswasa, we tell this person, don't listen to these thoughts. Just put an X on them, and inshallah, Allah will accept from you your prayer however it is. But for the other type of person, the standard type is, if I'm certain 100% that I missed a sajda in the previous rak'ah, and now I woke out of this trance and I realized, oh man, I did something wrong. If a full unit of prayer passes on the pillar, then what are we going to do? We're going to cancel out the previous rak'ah, and now your second is going to become your first. And now it's as though the first rak'ah did not count. If a full unit of prayer passes until you remember that you forgot a certain position in your salah. Again, like I said, be careful. This is a door of waswasa for people who have intrusive thoughts. This doesn't apply to them. So that's the first higher recommended act, the first tashahhud. What's the second one? The second one, they say, is as-salah ala al-al in the second tashahhud. We said in the second tashahhud, saying the tahiyyat and saying as-salah ala nabi, these are pillars, right? Or saying at-tahiyyatullah, mubarakat, salawat tayyibat, whichever sigha you follow. And then you're saying Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, right? This is a pillar. But wa ala ali Muhammad, they say this is a higher recommended act in the second tashahhud, right? This is not in the first one. We're talking about the second tashahhud now, right? If you leave that out, you should do sajdat sahu. If you don't, what happens? What if you forget to do the prostration of forgetfulness? This happens sometimes. What if you forget to do the prostration of forgetfulness? Do you do it twice the time? No, you just don't do anything. That's it. Because the prostration of forgetfulness, sujood as-sahw, is recommended, not required. In all situations that it applies, it's recommended according to the majority of scholars. There's only one madhab that says it's required, and that's the Hanbali school. The Hanbali school says it's required. The other ones, including the Shafi'i school, they say that it is recommended. Meaning, if you say salam and you haven't done it, then it's okay. You could just move on. Your prayer will still be valid. Okay? So that's about the second. What is the third? This third one only applies to the Shafi'i school, and it might be foreign to those who haven't studied fiqh before. In Fajr, you know that we do qunut. And you see this whether you pray here or in ICPC Patterson, you might see this often. This is according to the Shafi'i school. The Shafi'i school does qunut in Fajr out loud. What is qunut? That is dua. In the second rak'ah, when you rise from bowing position. This is considered a higher recommended act. But this would be applicable to the Shafi'i school, not the other schools. So these are the three higher recommended acts. Now, going back to what we are speaking about in terms of the recommended acts, there are recommended acts before Salah and during Salah and after Salah, right? This, we're going to use it later on when we talk about the prohibited prayer times, inshallah. So what are the recommended acts before Salah? There are three things: adhan and iqamah and brushing your teeth. This is a recommended act. The Prophet ﷺ used to brush his teeth a lot. He used to brush it before Salah, and he used to brush it before wudu, among many other situations where he would brush it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are the three that are recommended before. And then the ones that are recommended during, they're the ones that are vast in number. Vast in number. We're going to talk about them. And then the ones that are recommended after, they're the adhkar and the certain remembrances that we say after we say salam. So inshallah, this is what we're going to go over. The first of these is adhan. Adhan. What does adhan mean linguistically? Adhan means notification. That's what it means, i'lam. It's a notification of when prayer enters. It is a special type of notification with certain wordings. And the story of adhan, as it was learned during the time of the companions, is known. It was actually taken from dreams that the companions saw. They saw these dreams, and the Prophet ﷺ affirmed what they had seen. And he asked the one who saw the dream to tell Bilal the wordings that he heard in his dream, because Bilal has a beautiful voice, and he has a loud voice and a very far-reaching voice. And Bilal's voice could reach far distances. That was a consideration with adhan back then, because it was actually for the purpose of notification. During the time of the companion, they didn't have speakers, right? But now, is it only for the purpose of notification? No. They say it's a ibadah. In fact, there's a verse in the Quran that says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَى إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Who is better in speech than one who calls to Allah and has done good deeds and says, I'm from the Muslims? They say this is talking about the mu'adhin. On the Day of Judgment, the people who made adhan will have the longest necks, as the hadith the Prophet ﷺ mentions. In fact, there are hadith that tell us we should make adhan even when in complete isolation. Now, of course, we're going to learn that this recommendation of adhan is for males, for brothers. And why is that the case? Because ibadah is with ta'abbud. Ibadah is with ta'abbud. We learn ibadah from the Prophet ﷺ. He set for us the standard, and that's what we follow. So it is for the purpose of notification initially, but it's an act of worship in itself. And a brother should make adhan whether there are people present with him or not, whether he's in his home or he's in the middle of the desert. The hadith says that when the person is alone in the desert and he makes adhan, everything that hears his voice will witness for him on the Day of Judgment. This is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, adhan as such, so when do we make adhan? We make adhan for the 5 daily prayers, of course, and for Jumu'ah. But then we have some situations where we would not make adhan. Like when? Like when we're joining prayers. We don't make adhan twice, we make adhan once, and then we make iqamah twice. That's what we make. So, and then there's a category of nawafil, قسم يسن فيه النداء دون الأذان والإقامة. This is for Eid prayers and for Jumu'ah and for eclipse prayers. For Eid prayers and eclipse prayers, we learn from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ not to do adhan, but instead to say something else. As-salat jami'ah, as-salat jami'ah, salah in congregation. We don't have adhan for Eid, but we say something to gather the people, as the Prophet ﷺ used to say. And for everything else besides what we mentioned, we don't make adhan or iqamah. All right. Now, we said that there are certain conditions for the person making adhan. What are they? We said the central conditions is, first off, Islam. This is what we would say in general. This is a general condition. And then it should be done by a male, not by females. It's not sunnah for females to make adhan, but it is sunnah for them to make iqamah. If you are, for example, praying alone as a sister, should you make iqamah for salah? Yes. If you're praying as a group of sisters alone, should you make iqamah? The answer is yes. Right? If you're praying alone as a brother, should you make adhan and iqamah? Yes. If you don't, is there anything wrong? No, this is a sunnah. It's not an obligation. The sunnah in adhan is to elongate the voice, to make it loud, tartil, and raf' al-sawt, as they say. And there are other sunnahs, like turning to the right and turning to the left, when you say hayya ala salah and hayya ala al-falah. It is, some scholars also say, there's a sunnah called tathweeb, or there's not some scholars, this is what we say, in as-salatu khayrun min al-nawm. We call this tathweeb. This is what we say for Fajr. As-salatu khayrun min al-nawm. Salah is better than sleep. Salah is better than sleep. And then there is another recommendation for adhan, and that is what we call tarjih. And that's to say the shahada silently. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, before saying out loud, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. So this is what we call tarjih. This is a sunnah that's not very well known by people. This is a sunnah, it's a recommended thing, tarjih. The other thing, and this, they would do this historically just to make their sound reach a farther distance. Technically, in our day and age, it won't make a difference whether you do this or not. And that's in the placement of the hands on the ears. So they say, وَضْعُ الْمُؤَذِّنِ أُصْبَعَهُ الْمُسَبِّحَتَيْنِ فِي أُذُنَيْهِ لِكَيْ يَسْتَدِلَّ بِهِ أَنَّهُ يُؤَذِّنُ. So this is also for the appearance of adhan. For someone seeing the person from far away, standing on the minaret, they would realize he's making adhan. But again, no one's going to see you now, and it's not going to make your voice reach a farther distance. Right? So that's a little bit relating to adhan. There's, of course, in iqamah, there's a difference. So you might see people make adhan and iqamah in different ways, right? Because there's different narrations relating to them. Now when it comes to making iqamah, we say things one time. In adhan we say them twice, except iqamah. Allahu Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falah, qad qamat as-salah, qad qamat as-salah. In iqamah we say qad qamat as-salah twice. We say everything else once. As for adhan, we say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, right? In the adhan. So we're saying it one set in iqamah. Now this is not held by everybody. If you go to different masajid, you will see other things. Say, for example, if you were to go to a Hanafi masjid, you will see the adhan just like the iqamah. The adhan just like the iqamah. That's why you'll see them say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, to the very end, just like that. Right? And if you go to a Maliki masjid, if you were to ever go to Morocco, for example, you will also see a difference in the adhan over there as well, with a slight difference. So, and this is fine. What is this all based on? This is based on narrations and their interpretations. Narrations and their interpretations. ما في مشكلة. These are all slight and they're not very consequential things. Right. Now, that's about the ones, so we said adhan, iqama, and siwak. What about the ones during salah? I'm going to list some of these out, and again, I want to get through both subjects. Some of these we already addressed as we were explaining. The first of the sunnahs that's during salah is raising the hands. And this is all based on the Shafi'i school, as I'm telling you. Raising the hands, it would be for the fingertips to reach halfway point of your ears. And this is in 4 places. This is in 4 places. In the first takbir, and when you go down to ruku', and when you rise up from ruku', and when you stand from the first tashahhud. That's it. So you do not do it as you're rising from the first sajda, and then go back down to the second sajda. There's those who say that, but in what I'm teaching you guys here, is 4 places. Again, takbirat al-ihram, the opening takbir, that's 1. Then when you bow down, then when you rise up from bowing, and when's the 4th time? When you stand up from the first tashahhud. That's it. Those are the 4 situations. And again, is there a requirement? No, these are recommended things. If you don't do them, does it affect your prayer in any way? No, it does not. You just miss out on the reward of the sunnah. You miss out on the reward of the sunnah. Okay, so that's about raising the hands. And of course, there's some symbolism, like we said, in these. What is that? Is that you're as though you're throwing the world behind your back and throwing material distractions behind your back and focusing on Allah. That's one symbolic thing they say in it. Now, what's the next recommended act? The next recommended act is placing the right hand over the left hand. And that's when you are in qiyam, right? And where do you place it? As we learned, you place it on your gut, on your ma'idah, and you grab your wrist just like this. The third sunnah, looking at the place of your sujood. Looking at the place of your sujood. And that's something that is recommended, to keep your eyes on the place of your sujood. To move your eyes around, this is khilaful awla. To move your head, this is makruh. Your prayer is not going to be invalidated if you look left or right. It won't be invalid, but it is lesser reward. It is lesser reward. So, and it's makruh, it's disliked. Right. So, what about closing your eyes? Can you close your eyes during prayers? Technically, it's not sunnah, but Imam Nawawi, he addresses this. He says, if that's what makes you, that's what helps you find khushu' and focus and concentration, then there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's actually an aid to do something virtuous, which is to have concentration. But technically, the sunnah is to look at the place of sujood. Okay? Dua al-iftitah, the opening dua. You will find this in the book. You can try to memorize it on your own, but and there's different narrations for it. One of them is وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِي لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ حَنِيفًا مُسْلِمًا وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ وَأَنَا مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. So this is what we call the opening supplication. When do you say this? Before you start with Fatiha. You can memorize this slowly from the book, inshallah. Okay? That's the 6th recommended act. The next recommended act, the 7th one, is saying أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, ta'awudh. The next recommended act is saying Ameen. And what did we say Ameen means? We said it when we were going over it. What does it mean? There you go. Allahumma stajib. Oh Allah, answer. Oh Allah, answer. What's the next recommended act? It is reading a surah after Fatiha. Reading a surah after Fatiha is not an obligation. Technically, if someone was to just read Fatiha for all 4 rak'ahs, their prayer is going to be valid. But they're missing out on a sunnah, right? They're missing out on a virtuous deed. And the next one is, and this is an important one, pay attention. I'm not listing all of them for you. I'm picking the most important ones. الجهر في موضعه والإصرار في موضعه. Reciting out loud when you're supposed to and reciting silently when you're supposed to. So this is a lesser, pay attention, this is a lesser recommended act. So say if someone prayed Maghrib at home by themselves and they were absent-minded in the first rak'ah, for example, and they realized that they didn't recite out loud. They were just reciting silently to themselves. They realized now, should they do prostration of forgetfulness in the end of prayer? The answer? No, they should not. Why? Because it's a lesser recommended act, meaning no sujood sahu. Same thing if someone, now no one should do this obviously, but say if we're praying behind someone, he's praying Asr, and he started reciting out loud. Is this something that the Imam needs to be corrected for? This is not something that he would prostrate for forgetfulness for. He shouldn't do this. Maybe after prayer you could bring it to his attention, hey, by the way, Imam, you were praying Asr, why'd you recite out loud? That's khilaf as-sunnah, that's against the sunnah. But it's not one of those things that needs to be corrected. Right? It's not one of those things that you need to say subhanallah for or do anything else. It is one of those things that you just bring to the attention of the Imam afterwards or wait till he pays attention on his own. Tamam. الجهر في موضعه والإصرار في موضعه. That's the next sunnah. Jazakallah khair. The next sunnah is for the follower to listen attentively to the recitation of the Imam. Right? And the next sunnah after that is قراءة الفاتحة للمأموم بعد التأمين. The next sunnah for the Imam is to leave a pause after Ameen so that the follower could say Surah Al-Fatiha. Now, in what we learned, for the one following, does he have to recite Surah Al-Fatiha or not? Yes or no? How many people say yes? The follower, does he have to recite Surah Al-Fatiha? Raise your hand if you say yes. Okay, raise your hand if you say no. Okay, huh? I just asked you yes or no. So, seems like we have different madhabs in the audience. So what we learned was Fatiha is a pillar of Salah. And as such, the Imam and the follower have to recite it. Whether the Imam gives an opportunity or not, it doesn't matter. Even if he goes on to recite right away. Now the Hanafi school is of the opinion that the follower just listens. He does not say Fatiha whatsoever. Whether the Imam gives a chance or not, just listen. That's it. That's all you have to do. That's the Hanafi school. So that's about that. Huh? You should recite it after him, not with him. Yeah. Now, here's the next sunnah. Pay attention to this. The next sunnah is making the first two rak'ahs, or the first rak'ah longer than the second, and the second longer than the third. And as such, that's such. So the sunnah is if you're praying 4 units, the first 2 rak'ahs should be longer than the second 2. The first 2 should be longer than the second 2. That's the sunnah. Sunnah is that. And the next sunnah after that is takbirat al-intiqal. Every Allahu Akbar except the first one is a sunnah. Know this. Like say if you forget to say it, you don't do anything. That's it. You just move on. So the only required Allahu Akbar is the first one. In the very beginning of Salah, the one that we call takbirat al-ihram. All of the other ones, the takbirah for changing position, takbirat al-intiqal, this is a lesser recommended act. It's not required in any way. Good? All right. Takbirat التسميع عند الاعتدال, saying سمع الله لمن حمده, it's also a recommended act. ربنا لك الحمد or ولك الحمد, all this is a recommended act. Saying Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, all of these lesser recommended acts. If you were to leave any of this out, nothing is expected of you after that, right? And those are the main ones. What I just said to you are the main. There's also the manner of sitting, like we said. When you sit between the two sajdas, you should be sitting in a way where what we call is iftirash, right? You sit on the inside. One of the brothers showed us last time. You sit on the inside of your left foot and you keep your right foot bent facing towards the qibla. That's when you sit between the two sajdas. And that's also when you sit for the first tashahhud. In the last tashahhud, you do what we call tawarruk, which requires a little more flexibility, which is when you put your rear end on the ground and your left foot between your right foot while your right foot is bent. That's best how I could describe it in words. Hope that makes sense to you. All right, so that's tawarruk. All right. And then we said the sunnah in salam is what? You say Assalamu alaykum, and then once you finish Assalamu alaykum, you turn your face. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah. This is sunnah, to do it in that manner. Another sunnah we didn't mention is jalsat al-istiraha. The short pause as you're going to rise from the second sajda, right? Before you stand for the next rak'ah. So say you finish the first rak'ah, you finish the sajda. Instead of going right up, shooting right up, what did we say you should do? Sit down for a moment and then position yourself upward to stand up. This is what we call jalsat al-istiraha. Another sunnah I didn't mention was when you go down. We mentioned this last week. Go down on your knees or on your hands. Knees or hands. We said there's both opinions, right? Because there's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said, don't go down like the way the camel goes down. And the scholars, they differed. What does this mean exactly? The camel has 4 knees. So is he telling us don't go down on our knees? Or the camel goes down with its 2 joints in the front first, or don't go down on your hands first. So which one is it? There's madhahib on this. In the Shafi'i school aligns with people who are a little bit more physically fit. Go down on your knees, right? Go down on your knees first, and then put your hands. If you're not able to do that due to technical difficulties, then go down on your hands first, right? So that's about going down on your knees or on your hands, right? Any questions about recommended acts during prayers? Any questions? After him. Usually the imam gives a pause, or should give a pause. Yes. And if that pause isn't enough, you still go on reading anyway, because it's a pillar. And then I'll listen to him after I'm done. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of them. There's other ones. Yeah, there's other ones. There's different narrations of it. Yeah, opening supplication. You can find it in the book, inshallah. Yes. Yes. Any other questions before I go to the next subject? Yes, it'll be after Allahu Akbar. Questions? Yes. No, because if there's no reason for you to do sajdat as-sahw, it's going to affect your prayer if you do it. So you should only do it when there's clear reason to do it, right? You should only do it when there is clear reason to do it. Okay? Yeah. You're talking about the beginning? Yes. Yes, exactly. You do that and then you recite A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem and then you recite Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. No, 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 no. It's recommended. This is all part of what we call the opening supplication, right? It's dua al-iftitah is not required. If you leave it out, it's not going to invalidate your prayers. Okay? Yes. There's a special subject for it. That's going to come right now. Well, not today. Next week, inshallah. How to do sujood sahu. Yes. No, we answered this last week. So you guys paid attention to the question. If you join during ruku', do you still say Fatiha? No. In this situation, the Imam يتحمله عنك. The Imam relieves you of this burden. Yeah. Yeah. Change have to should, and you're good. Take have to should, and you're good. Okay? Yeah, so you should do it, in other words. You don't, because like we said, sujood sahwi is not required. But yeah, if you leave a pillar out and you go back to it, you should do sujood sahwi. We're going to study sujood sahwi. It's in its own section. Prostration for forgetfulness. When do I do it? When I add or decrease from the prayers. Certain things. Yes. Yeah. You're praying 2 rak'ah sunnah, you mean? And you forget something? Like what? Should you do prostration of forgetfulness? Yes. Yeah. Sunnah is just like fard in this. No difference between them. Any other questions about Yeah. Go ahead. What's the translation of it? If you go to recommended acts and you see lesser recommended acts, let's see if he mentions it here. All right, so he only mentions some of the ones that are here, and I can't see jalsat al-istiraha. So basically, istiraha means a moment of relax, right? Istiraha means relaxation, right? So, but it's like a pause, a momentary pause that you sit down. So it's like you go back into the position of sitting between the two sajdas, but you only do that for a moment, right? That's it. You just sit in it, and then you put your hands forward, and then you press down on them to stand up. Good? Yeah, you're welcome. Any other things? Yes. If you miss the first tashahhud, then so look, if you just finished the second sajda in the second rak'ah, and now you're standing up. As you're rising up, you remember, oh man, I didn't do the first tashahhud. I can sit back down. But no, you're rising up, and you fully stood up, and now I remembered, oh, I didn't do the second sajda. We say, the tashahhud, I didn't do the tashahhud. What do? Just keep going. And do sujood sahu in the end. You had your hand up. Well, we're going to go over Salat al-Jama'ah later. The woman should still be in the middle, but in the midst of the row, not much ahead. But we're going to go over that later on. And the positioning, that's all sunnah. It's not like a required thing. We'll go over it when we go over Salat al-Jama'ah, inshallah. All right, so let's go on to the invalidators. And if you're following in the book, I'll give you the page. It's 71, right? Jazakallah khair. It's on page 71. Let me get it out in this book. And okay, 260 in this book. All right, 260. All right, so page 71, if you look at page 71, he mentions the following 11 things invalidate prayer and require that the prayer be performed again. The first of these things that he goes over is intentional speech. Now, why on earth would someone talk during Salah, right? Why on earth would someone talk during Salah? You'd be surprised. Sometimes it happens. Especially if someone's leading Salah, like I've seen this happen before. Someone is leading Salah and he gets corrected. And he doesn't know what to do. He gets nervous. So he says, he couldn't hear what the correction was. So it's a knee-jerk reaction. He says, what? This has happened. This happens, we're human beings. So that's an example of someone talking during Salah. Someone says a full word like, what? Or if someone says, ouch, right? Like their knee hurts and they accidentally say, ouch, right? That's an example of talking during Salah. Yeah, that's a word, right? Ouch. You feel knee pain and then, or whatever, your back hurts and you just blurt out the word, ouch, right? Is that going to invalidate your Salah? Or I'll give you a practical example. We lose track of where we are in Salah. The Imam, all right, we have someone leading Salah who does 3 rak'ahs instead of 4. Some people try to bring it to his attention, but he doubles down. These people don't know what they're talking about. I prayed 4 rak'ahs. But he actually prayed 3 rak'ahs. So after Salah, they start having a conversation, right? Someone here says, Imam, you prayed 3 rak'ahs. And then he says, no, I didn't, 4 rak'ahs. And then someone else says, no, you did. And then they have this conversation back and forth, a lot of words, right? Now we have a problem. We have a problem. If it's actually 3 rak'ahs and we come to this realization, all right, the Imam says, okay, you know what, I guess you guys were right, I'm wrong. But now what do we do? Do we add 1 rak'ah and that's it? Or we have to repeat the whole prayer? What do we do? We have an example in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and that's the standard for this. There's a hadith that's called the hadith of Dhul Yadayn. The hadith of Dhul Yadayn. And does anyone know this hadith? Does anyone know this hadith? It's a famous hadith. Anyone know this hadith? No one knows this hadith? Okay, good. So, inshallah you'll know it after now. So there was this, the Prophet ﷺ was leading the companions in prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ said salam after 2 rak'ahs. And this, the Prophet ﷺ, this was to teach the ummah. This was to teach the ummah. Allah made the Prophet ﷺ forget so that the ummah could learn a grand lesson. He made salam after 2 rak'ahs and there was supposed to be 4 rak'ahs. And everyone followed him except this companion named Dhul Yadayn. He came forward and he said, أَقَصُرَتِ الصَّلَاةُ أَمْ نَسِيتْ Ya Rasulullah. Has the prayer been made shorter? Because that's the thing with the Prophet ﷺ. He has revelation. Why would they correct him? Maybe something changed. We don't know. So he said, did the prayer shorten or have you forgotten, O Prophet of Allah? So he said, it hasn't been shortened, nor have I forgotten. So then he said to the Prophet ﷺ, Bala ya Rasulullah. Yes, you did. So then the Prophet ﷺ turned to the companions and he said, أَحَقٌّ مَا يَقُولُ ذُو الْيَدَيْنِ. Is it true what Dhul Yadayn is saying? So then the companions nodded and said, yes. They nodded yes. So then the Prophet ﷺ stood and he prayed 2 more rak'ahs and then he did sajdat sahu and then he did salam. And we learned a big lesson. So this is an example of talking during Salah. So that's why in this section, he tells you this, right? The first invalidator is intentional speech, consisting of a single letter that conveys a meaning. Like if someone was to say, oh, and like if they were to remember something, that's a meaning that's being communicated. Or 2 consecutive letters that do not convey a meaning. like ba, right? It doesn't mean any. What does ba mean, right? The prayer is not invalidated by intentional speech that occurs as part of a supplication. Like say if you're making a lot of dua, like you're doing dua during salah, your own words. During sujood, is that going to invalidate your prayer? No, it's dua. That's part of worship. Unintentional speech does not invalidate the prayer unless there is quite a bit, meaning more than 6 consecutive words. That's what the Shafi'i school says. Where did they get 6 words from? Because up until this point, so the first part, the Prophet ﷺ still did not know or still did not think there was a potential that he was in salah. Because when he said salam from 2 rak'ahs, he's technically still in salah. He just doesn't realize it yet, right? So the first words don't count. When do they start counting? When there's a potential that he's actually in salah. What did he say? Is it true what Dhul Yadayn said? It's 6 words. That's what he said. A full statement, a sentence. So this is a lesson. There's a lesson in this because the companions nodded and the Prophet ﷺ stood up immediately. In this type of situation, you should limit speech to what is absolutely necessary. Imam says salam, someone says or people say, it's a substantial number or considerable opinion, hey, there's a mistake, we need 1 more rak'ah. No arguing, no confusion. We're going to consider the lesser number, no talking, just stand up and do sujood sahwi, that's it. That's what the Prophet ﷺ did. He said 1 statement, and after this, when the companions nodded, they stood up and they continued. That's it. That's what the standard that the Prophet ﷺ set in this hadith that we learned, the hadith of Dhul Yadayn. So, this actually happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and that's why they said 6 words as he says here. That one's done, right? So, now look, what about speech? Look, لا يبطل الكلام القليل في 3 حالات. إذا كان ناسيا، إذا كان جاهلا، إذا سبق لسانه. Right? So, if it is minimal speech, and it's said forgetfully, then your prayer won't be invalid. If you said it forgetfully or ignorantly, or if it blurted out of your mouth, like you said, ouch, right? 1 word, right? So if someone says ouch, or someone says what, or someone says oh, and it just like blurts out of their mouth, they did it accidentally, do they have to restart their prayers? No, because it's forgetfully. But say, if someone says it intentionally, why would someone say it intentionally? This is something for you to tell your kids, like your 8-year-old or your 9-year-old or your 10-year-old when they're next to one of the kids and they're going to say, I'm going to stomp on your foot. Tell them if you say that to someone next to you, tell them you got to repeat your prayer, right? Because you talked on purpose, even if it's less than 6 words. Right? If you say, I'm going to stomp on your foot, then, Habibi, you're going to have to do your prayer again, right? Because this is on purpose, right? Whenever speech is on purpose, it's going to invalidate the prayer. Okay, I just noticed that. All right, that's about speech. All right, now the next one is about excessive motions. Al-fi'lul kathir. This is an important one. The second invalidator is excessive motion. Examples of excessive motion that would invalidate the prayer include 1 major motion of a type that is not part of the prayer. 1 major motion. Like what? And why on earth did someone do this? Don't ask me, but in fiqh they tell you. If someone was to jump, right, this is going to invalidate their salah because it's a major motion. Or several small motions. Like say if someone mindlessly does something strange, like say if they're in the 2nd row and they see a space open in the front row, right? Someone went to make wudu. And instead of walking over there or taking steps forward, they just hop from the 2nd row to the... That would invalidate the prayer because that's an obscene gesture. How on earth could you be in a state of ibadah and hop forward, right? So that won't work. But say now if the more normal thing is if you're taking steps forward, you need to be careful. Like if you're taking steps forward, they say, what counts as a motion? This is 1 motion, right? That's 1 motion, right? So if you're going to the row in front of you, You could either do it with one motion or two, like this, and that's it. Or, like some people, they don't pay attention to this because they don't know it's a thing. They'll take extra steps like this, like that. No, don't do that. That's going to invalidate your prayer. Or say, when would someone else do excessive motions? If they're really distracted. Like what? I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. This imam's taking really long in Taraweeh. Like this, the prayer's done. This won't work. If someone starts doing stretches during their salah, or starts scratching in various, like all over the place, is all going to invalidate the salah. But moving the fingers, for example, like this, like if I scratch, fingers are not considered full motions. A full motion would be moving an arm, moving a foot, moving your head, or moving your body. This would not be. Because no one's going to be utterly still during the whole prayer. Like sometimes there might be a slight motion where someone might sway a little bit like this. That's not going to invalidate the prayer because we're not utterly still. There's going to be some movement. But we should not be excessive. You know where else I've seen this a lot, it happens a lot. Some people, they get so into their qunut and they'll do something very strange that they should not do, right? They'll raise their hand in dua, and as the imam is saying du'as that are really affecting their heart, they're saying, Ameen, Ameen, and they're moving their hands like this. Prayer's done. Yeah, prayer's invalid if you move your hands like that, right? So these are some examples of excessive motions. And they say that so what breaks a motion? Is it 3 motions during the whole prayer? No. We're talking about 3 consecutive. What does consecutive mean? Without pause. So what would break? So this is 3 separated motions, right? If there's a pause between them, or else if we're going to count motions from the beginning of prayer to the end of it, and if I reach 3, I'm done, no one's prayer will ever be sound. I'm going to be thinking about the motions more than I'm going to be thinking about the prayer itself. So you got it? It's 3 consecutive, meaning no pause between them. That's what, and this is what the Shafi'i school says. Other schools, they put a general scale on it. They say that if the amount of motions in the prayer is so much that if someone observes the person, they won't think they're praying, then that's what's going to invalidate the prayer. A general scale. And this is why, for example, some madhabs, they don't allow holding the mushaf during the nafil prayers. Why? Because when you're holding it, it does not look as the motion of prayer. This looks like someone standing and reading a book, right? So that's why some madhabs, they don't even allow holding the mushaf in nafil prayers. Shafi'i school allows it, but some do not, based on this, because there's this general criteria that you should look like someone who prays, right? You should look like someone who prays. Tamam? All right, that's the second one. Anyone have any question about that? Yes. Yeah, so look, here, let's see if he mentions it here. Yes, he mentions it as the 10th invalidator. The 10th invalidator is cackling or loud laughter. So smiling would not invalidate the prayers. Smiling is not going to invalidate it. But when it's laughing out loud with a cackle, then that's going to invalidate the prayers. Yeah, absolutely. What else? Yes, when he forgets. This is if he remembers soon, right? If he remember. So what's the scale? What's the scale? So we're sitting down. There's 2 things that are going to make me redo the prayer. Either a long time passes or too much speech happens. These are the 2 things. What's the approximation for time passing? The amount of time that it takes for someone to do 2 rak'ahs, 2 short rak'ahs, a few minutes. So basically say if 5 minutes pass and then someone realizes, oh man, I only did 2 rak'ahs, or oh man, we only prayed 2 rak'ahs, we should have done 4, then in this case, they're going to have to redo the prayer. They're going to have to redo the prayer. So too much time or too much talking. But like say if we remember within 1 or 2 minutes time, and the person's already reached the door of the masjid, we tell brother, come back, and he'll join us. No problem. Even if he's walked a lot or walked away from the qibla, it doesn't affect. That's fine. He could continue in his prayer. Tamam? Okay. So that's, what's up? So try to do it without excessive motion. Like we said, moving the fingers is not going to be, so you should try to do it with as minimal motion as possible. So if it's in your pocket, this is one motion. Silencing it, and then bringing it back up will be a separated motion. Just don't do it quickly, right? Yeah. So that's what it is about that. Any other thing? Yes. So if it's a far distance and she'll have to, so look, say if I have a baby in front of me here by this divider, it's quite a distance, and I see that there's potential of danger, or say the baby is over there and is crying, then in this case, what should I do? No, I should take motion, I should move, take big steps or minimum amount of steps to get to the baby, and then bend down and pick up the baby. That's fine. But say if it's like far away, all the way over there, and I would need to turn my back or turn my chest away from the qibla. In this case, I am going to, in the Shafi'i school, I would come back and I would need to restart my prayer. There is a madhab out there that says, I don't know which one it is, I think it might be the Hanafi school, but I'm not sure, that would say you could build on it. Like if you left due to something that was some type of danger or something like that, that you would leave and that you would come back and build on it. The Shafi'i school would tell you to restart it. Unless you're able to get to the baby or the danger with minimum amount of steps, then in that case, no problem. Okay? The salam, is not really necessary. The salam is not really necessary. Like if you're going to go for the baby, salam is not really necessary. If you just intend to end your prayer, like if it's one of those situations where you have to end the prayer, the baby is very far away, then you would just end the prayer. Some people say salam when they pass gas or something. That's meaningless. You've already lost your wudu when you pass the gas. Why are you going to say salam? So, but anyway, yeah. If you invalidate your salah? What do you mean? Yes. Okay, if you're in jama'ah and you do something to invalidate it, do you restart it again immediately? You can. You can. Why are you asking about immediately or not? You can if you want to. So now it's done, right? So you could start whenever you want again. Like say, give me an example. No, don't finish, because if it's invalid, there's no point in you finishing, right? So once it's invalid, your prayer is done, aslan. So you just start again. That's it. Yeah. All right, let's continue here. So that's excessive motion. The third invalidator is the presence of ritual impurity, either by attempting to begin prayer while having ritual impurity or its occurrence during the prayer. Of course, anything that's going to break your wudu or bring filth on you, of course, these things are going to invalidate your prayers. So that's of course an obvious. But here's a situation. This happens a lot. So if this happens with carrying babies. Like say if you're carrying a baby that needs a diaper change, and this happens while you're carrying the baby. If no najasa gets on you, fine. but you need to put down the baby immediately. You can't carry a baby that needs a diaper change, because that's like you carrying najasa. This is important, especially for moms. When you're going to pray with the baby, if the baby needs a diaper change, you need to do that before the prayer. You can't carry, or don't carry the baby then. But you can't carry a baby that has najasa on it, because that would make that najasa linked with you. So this is one thing to pay attention about najasa. Now, say if you pray a full prayer, and you realize after that there was some type of najasa and impurity on your clothing that you did not know. What happens next? You're going to need to repeat this prayer even if you pay attention to it after. Why? Because now it's become clear to you that you did not meet the full criteria of prayer, and that's purity from impurities, purity from najasa. Okay? The fifth is exposure of one's nakedness, one's awrah. This might happen a lot with guys with their shirts, for example, or with a sister with her hijab, or with her feet, or whatever it is. This could happen. Does the prayer become invalid immediately? Answer, no. It becomes invalid when you know of it and you don't immediately cover it. When you know of it and you don't immediately cover it. So that's what he says here. An intentional exposure of one's nakedness would immediately invalidate your prayer, of course. Suppose a woman intentionally removes her hijab, or a man raises his shorts above his knees. In both cases, it would of course invalidate their prayers. Having one's nakedness exposed is slightly different from intentionally exposing one's nakedness, right? So if someone's nakedness is exposed, their prayer is not invalidated if they immediately cover up what has been exposed. And sometimes they might not know about this. If you don't know about it, how could you be held accountable for it? So when you know about it, then you must cover it immediately. All right, so here's an example. Brother, his lower back was showing during prayers. The brother behind him in the second row noticed, and he goes to him, brother, you need to repeat your prayer because I saw your lower back during Salah. Answer, the answer is, no, I don't. I was not aware that it was exposed. And how would I be liable and held accountable for something I wasn't aware of? So in this case, this brother does not have to do the prayer again. Same thing, sister. Your hair was partially showing from here. Your hijab wasn't fully covered. So now you need to do your salah again. We're going to say, this one is going to follow the assumption. It's different than najasa. Because najasa, that's something that occurs prior to the prayer. And there's some element of negligence there that the person didn't investigate. What am I wearing? Does it have najasa on it or not? Right? Or it may occur during the prayer. That's different. That would invalidate your wudu aslan if it occurs during the prayer. But if it was there on your clothing, it was there before the prayer, you didn't investigate enough. The exposure of private parts, though, this happens during the prayer. And if I'm not aware of it, how am I going to be held accountable for it? This is the difference between the two. This person, there's clear negligence, and he could have found out if he investigated his clothes. This person, no negligence, because they didn't know. You see the difference? You see the difference between the two situations? Okay. Anyone have any questions about that one?
You mentioned for najasa specifically, if you find out you were unimpure, they can repeat the salah. But what if you were in a situation where you found out much later, just the last time it was that change anything?
No, about the najasa?
Like in terms of repeating the prayer, let's say I prayed the first salah I was unclear, and then I found out
Maghrib. Yeah, the passage of time is not going to affect. That's gonna. You're still going to have to redo it. Yeah. Yes. If I never know, then inshallah Allah will forgive. But if I end up finding out, then in this case, like say for example, someone knows that you saw it. Oh, your mother tells you, oh, why are you wearing those pants? Those are the same ones that the dog slobbered over. Oh man, I completely forgot. Now I have to do it again. You get it? But if I never find out, then how could I be held accountable? Najis. Yes. By us, the whole dog is najis. The hair and the saliva. Yeah. Yes. Okay. You're making me say something I didn't want to say. All right. So there's difference of opinion on cats. There's about cat hair. So what does the Shafi'i school follow? I know you guys are going to hate the Shafi'i school after this, but it's okay. There's other things to make you hate the Hanafi school too, but we'll get to that on another day. But anyway, I'm just joking. So the Shafi'i school says that anything that separates from an animal will have the ruling of its mayta. What's the ruling of it? So basically, if it's not ma'kul al-lahm, it's not an animal that's slaughtered, then the hair is going to be najis that would come off of it. So someone who owns cat is not going to follow the Shafi'i school on this issue. There's other madhabs. I think it's a split, 2 and 2. I don't know which one says which. I'm inclined to say that the Hanafi and Maliki say that the hair is not najis, and that the Hanbali is with the Shafi'i, but I'm not sure. But anyway, there are 2 madhabs that say that cat hair would not be considered najis. So if it's najis, that means it's going to be najis on my clothing and najis on my carpet. So if the carpet's full of cat hair, I can't pray on it as a Shafi'i. Yeah. So, but again, there's rahmah. Look, there's rahmah in differences of opinion of scholars. If something is extremely difficult to follow for certain situations that apply to you, then as long as you don't mix and match and follow your whim and try to find a way out of every taklif, then it's okay. It's okay if you follow an easier opinion, if it makes your life considerably easier in certain situations. Good? Inshallah. Mm-hmm. Yes? If you're not sure it's there, then the default it wasn't there. So they have this principle. Scholars are beautiful. May Allah bless them. They say that الأصل في كل حادث نسبته إلى أقرب زمن. This is a قاعدة فقهية. They say that the default in every new issue is to attribute it to the latest possible time it might have occurred. Meaning that I see najasa now, and this najasa could have come 5 hours ago, or it could have come 10 minutes ago. I have no idea when it came on my body, or on my scrubs, or whatever else it is. The default is I'm going to attribute it to the last possible time, and I'm not going to make it affect my previous prayers. Good? Inshallah. All right. So, yes. When is she praying? So so look, if we're talking about, we spoke about this earlier on. If you go back to the previous recordings, you'll find it there. If we're talking about the onset of the monthly cycle, if there was enough time for her to perform the prayer, had she performed it in the beginning of its time, then she's going to be expected to pray that prayer, right? So say, for example, Dhuhr came in at 1 p.m. and it's 1:15, and now she wants to try to pray. And at 1:15, during prayer, the onset of the cycle begins. We're going to say she's going to be expected to pray this prayer later on. Why? She could have prayed it at 1 p.m. She's the one who delayed to 1:15. And if she prayed at 1, is there some people talking in the back? Or something? It's distracting my noise. Jazakallah khair. So if she prayed at 1, she would have been free and clear. So, but say if, for example, she's going to pray on time in the beginning of the prayer time, and the prayer's only been in for 2 minutes, and there's no way she could have performed the prayer, then in that case she won't be expected to pray that prayer. You got it? Inshallah. All right, let's go on so we can finish. We're almost done for today. 5 minutes and we'll be done, inshallah. 5 minutes and we'll be done. All right, so we went over motion, we went over, all right, the next one that he mentions is changing the intention. Changing the intention. Now, for instance, if you started praying the noon prayer on your own, but then a group of people came into the mosque and began praying together, you could intend to shorten your prayer to a 2-prayer cycle so that you could go and join with them, right? You could change the intention of fard to nafil. You can't make the intention of nafil to fard. You can't do this. So you could make it a lesser intention so that you can join the group, right? But when would it invalidate your prayers? Example of changing intentions, including intending to leave, or to leave if something occurs. Like say, I'm waiting for an important phone call. If the important phone call comes, I'm going to stop my prayer. Your prayer is not valid from the beginning. You can't keep your intention conditional. You need to have a set intention for your salah. You can't. So changing the intention is going to affect the prayer. This is an important one. Turning away from the direction of prayer. This is an important one, guys. If someone turns their chest away from the qibla, then their prayer is going to be invalid, right? If I turn my face like that, if I see something interesting here, then it's going to be makruh, right? You should not turn your face during salah. But it's not going to invalidate it. When is it going to invalidate it? When your chest turns away. When might this happen? This might happen, like say, if a mom has her baby on her side, and the baby's crying, so she wants to lift the baby. So what does she do? She bends this way, and her shoulders towards the qibla, right? In this case, prayer is invalid, no good, right? Or say if there's something that dropped, like say if I dropped my phone on my right side, and I'm impatient, I don't want it to stay on the floor, I want to pick it up so that it's by me. So I bend down this way. If my chest turns away from the qibla, my prayer is invalid, right? When else might this happen? For those who follow the opinion that you could hold the mushaf during nafil prayers, if you have the mushaf next to you on a chair, and you bend towards the chair like this, and you want to pick it up so that you can continue reading, this is going to invalidate your prayer. Your chest needs to stay facing towards the qibla. If it moves away from the qibla, then in this case, it's going to be invalid. Yes? Sorry? Yeah, because it invalidated. When it invalidates, that means you need to restart your prayer. Got it? Yeah. All right, so the next one, like I said, we're almost done. The next one is eating or drinking. So eating or drinking, whether a small or a large quantity. This means that if a person, you're laughing, but there's a practical application for it. This means that if a person has food left over in their mouth from a meal, such as pieces of mango stuck between their teeth, and then they swallow some during prayer, it invalidates the prayer. This is one of the reasons why it is recommended to clean your teeth before praying or rinsing your mouth, and so on and so forth. Right? So again, like he said, if you have stuff stuck between your teeth, and then it flows out like mango or chicken or whatever else it is, don't swallow it, right? Spit it out, or keep a napkin. If you think that's going to happen, spit it out. That's why you should really rinse your mouth. It's a sunnah and an etiquette. Rinse your mouth before you go pray. Don't go rush into salah after you just had a meal, or after you just drank something, right? So what is the amount that would invalidate? They actually tell us this. The scholars, may Allah bless them. وَقَدَّرَهُ بَعْضُهُمْ بِقَدْرِ سِمْسِمَةٍ أَوْ سِمْسِمَتَيْن. You know, the amount of a sesame seed, right? Some of them, say, so even something as small as a sesame seed, if you were to eat it, then this is going to invalidate your prayers, right? Right? Something more than that. Something more than that would invalidate your prayers. Tamam. So that's pretty much everything that he mentions for the invalidators of prayer. And before I close, there are a bunch of... So here, look, there's one thing I need to announce to you guys. On the WhatsApp group, we started marketing for a one-day intensive that we have in the end of this month, inshallah. It's going to be in the masjid over here. It's called Fiqh 101, Intro to Islamic Law. It's going to be with me, inshallah, and it's going to be Sunday, November 26th. It's going to be from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., inshallah. And there's going to be lunch in between, bi'idhnillah. So we pray at 12:15 for dhuhr, and then the program starts at 12:30. There's going to be lunch in between, and there's going to be a book, and there's also going to be a workbook. If you'd like to join, you could scan the QR code and register for it, bidnillahi ta'ala. That's in the group. The other thing was the questions on Slido. MashaAllah. We have a bunch of questions here. Is a female's voice considered awra? This is the top question that we got. Is a female's voice, what does awra mean? There are different usages for the term awra. Awra is used in one sense as your private parts, right? So is the voice of a woman like your private part? If the answer was yes, then I cannot hear it under any circumstance, just as I can't see another person's awra. And of course, that's not the case. But there's another usage of the term awra, and that is fitna, a source of attraction, a source of attraction. Just as there's things that are sources of attraction in females, there are things that are attractions and sources of for males. And when we are in certain situations where there is an element of fitna, this is where we're going to use this term. So this term is very misleading because it confuses people, depends on how you're using it. So now if I know of myself that certain things are attracting me to the opposite gender, then I cannot expose myself to this. I must cease and remove myself from that reality, because there's some element of fitna happening in that situation. So that's what awra means in that type of situation. It would not be allowable if someone was to communicate with each other, if two people from the opposite gender was to communicate with each other in a setting that would make them inclined towards one another. That's what that means. Okay? Is everyone clear on what that means? Whoever had that question, if that clears it up for you. If not, then send a follow-up. What if you didn't know a lot of this info before? Are your previous prayers still accepted? Yes, inshallah. Like we said, there's two types of ignorance. We've said this before. There's excused ignorance and there's inexcused ignorance. What is the excused ignorance? They say that this is for someone who's new to Islam, or someone who grew up in an area far away from Islamic scholarship, where they won't know that these things are questions. Aslan, what am I supposed to ask? I never knew. This is the first time in my life I ever take a fiqh class. Like if you are someone back home living among many scholars and there's fiqh and it's very widespread knowledge, then we'd say you're not excused. But for someone who's taking fiqh for the very first time, and I didn't even know this stuff was a thing, then of course I'm going to be excused, inshallah. Right? So that's important to know about that. Inshallah, you'll get full reward. Now, just from now on, start doing the right thing. So palm on the floor is required for a valid sajda, required act. If you notice later, your palm was not on the ground. Is your sajda invalid? And therefore, like we said, your palms need to be on the floor in sajda. Your palms need to be on the floor in sajda. Be careful of waswasa, whoever is asking the question, but if you notice later on, then the sajda is going to be invalid and you would need to go back to it. If you did sajda on your fists, for example, instead of your palms. But your palms need to be on the ground, as we said. The remaining Slido questions for everyone following us from far away, I'll answer them in the WhatsApp group during the week, inshallah. And if any of you have any other questions that I didn't answer or didn't get to, just ask them in the WhatsApp group and I'll answer you, inshallah. All right? Subhanakallahumma hamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. يا رب وإياك.